D.L. Hugley and Bill Maher were not just two people who knew each other from the industry. D.L. was a regular on Bill's show. Bill came to D.L.'s 40th birthday party. These were two men who sat across from each other for years, had real conversations, disagreed on things, and still respected each other. That relationship is over now. And the reason it ended is something that D.L. could not stay quiet about. Because Bill Maher went on national television and said something about the Obama Presidential Library that crossed a line D.L. Hughley was not willing to let slide. Today, we are breaking down exactly what Bill Maher said, why D.L. Hughley's response was one of the most powerful things said on the internet this week, and why this moment is about something much bigger than two comedians having a falling out. This one matters. Let's get into it. Before we get into D.L.'s response, we need to make sure everybody understands exactly what Bill Maher said, because a lot of people are reacting to the reaction without knowing the full picture. Bill Maher was on his show Real Time. Ro Khanna was a guest, and the conversation turned to the newly opened Obama Presidential Library in Chicago. And what came out of Bill Maher's mouth was not a measured critique. It was not a thoughtful policy discussion about how presidential libraries get funded. It was something that felt personal in a way that went beyond politics.
You guys were both at the Obama Library?
Yeah.
Do we have a picture of the Obama Library? Because it looks like...
Death Star.
It looks like something aliens built in Dubai.
I liked it.
Why do it cost $850 million?
Yeah.
I don't understand why progressives like this. Couldn't that, money be better spent on something else? Who's going to go to this? Why do we need a president?
Raul, what do you think?
Why does anyone need a presidential library? These monuments to somebody's ego out of office. Are you?
Yeah,
anybody here in this audience planning to go to the Obama presidential library?
Sure. There you go.
Really?
Bill, come on.
What a bunch of fucking liars you are. You're not going to the Obama library.
At a time
February,
that
Chicago.
Elon Musk is talking about sending people to Mars, you're telling me that spending up to $1 billion, $1 billion on commemorating the first and only African American who's ever been president isn't worth it?
First of all, we don't need that building to do that. That's in our hearts and minds. That already happened.
Aliens built in Dubai, monument to somebody's ego. Now sit with those words for a second, because this is Bill Maher, a man who presents himself as a progressive voice, as someone who understands nuance, as someone who pushes back against ignorance, describing the first black president's library as something that looks like it was built by aliens and calling it an ego monument. But it did not stop there, because then Bill Maher did something that even his own studio audience could not get behind.
Are you? Anybody here in this audience planning to go to the Obama presidential library?
Sure.
There you go.
Really?
Bill, come on.
What a bunch of fucking liars you are. You're not going to the Obama.
His own audience raised their hands to say they wanted to go, and Bill Maher called them liars. Not gently, not as a joke that landed. He called his own audience liars for wanting to visit a landmark that celebrates the first black president in American history. And the audience did not laugh. They pushed back. Right there on his own show, in his own studio. His own crowd told him he was wrong. That moment, Bill Maher calling his audience liars for wanting to go to the Obama Library is what set everything in motion. That is what D.L. Hughley saw. And that is what broke something between them that had been building for a long time. Here is what makes D.L. Hughley's response different from every other person who reacted to Bill Maher's comments online. D.L. was not reacting as a fan. He was not reacting as a random commentator with an opinion. He was reacting as someone who had a real personal relationship with Bill Maher that stretched back decades.
But this is to inspire people. Michelle Obama gave one of the greatest speeches. I'm telling you, don't listen to me, just listen to her 5 minutes. And here's what she said. Racism was hurled at Barack Obama. Insults were hurled at Barack Obama. And he never lost his cool. He never gave in to a temper. And he showed that hope and patience and aspiration can overcome that.
What does that have to do with the building?
The building tells that story. The building.
We didn't know that story without the building? Unless you go to the building? Obama. Who was he again?
Well, you know the Center for Education. You know the Center for Education.
Okay, but it's not that $850 million versus going to Mars. I don't want to go to Mars either. It's $850 million going to the real causes of people who really need it. That's the money I'm talking about. We spend money on a lot of frivolous shit. I'm just saying you can't be a hypocrite about it.
I don't think most presidents need libraries. I do think that Obama's story is unique. I'm biased. I work for him, but it's a unique story of telling the possibility in this country of someone who had no shot. You know, when I was in law school, when I interned, they said to me, "Bro, you're Indian American, you're of Hindu faith, go to the Capitol because you'll never get elected to anything." That's what I heard. And then Barack Obama happened, and he changed the direction of this nation for millions of people.
Again, nothing to do with the building, but
So you heard his comments. Well, D.L. Hugley caught a whiff of these comments. And you know D.L. doesn't tolerate any disrespect towards black people, which is what I love, because neither do I. I don't tolerate it. I don't tolerate it at all. Do you know why? Because I've noticed that every group doesn't tolerate disrespect, so why should I? Every group doesn't tolerate it, so why should I? They handle it swiftly. You go disrespect another group, they'll make you pay for it immediately. And I'm going to be walking in that same accord. You disrespect blacks, I'm coming after you. Simple as that. I'm not tolerating any disrespect from anyone. I don't disrespect people, nor will I tolerate it. And D.L. Hugley got pretty pissed off, and he totally dismantled Bill Maher, who apparently used to be a friend of his, colleagues certainly, because they're both comedians, and he went off on him, and he had to check him, and I 100% agree with what he had to say. Take a listen to what he had to say here.
We are all becoming what we would have been anyway. That line right there is the key to understanding everything DL said. He is not saying Bill Maher suddenly changed. He is saying that as they both get older, the differences in how they see the world are becoming impossible to ignore. An older white man and an older black man looking at the same building, the first and only presidential library built for a black president, and seeing two completely different things. Bill Maher sees an expensive building he does not understand the purpose of. D.L. Hugley sees something that represents what is possible, something that his children looked at and believed in, something that for millions of black Americans is not just architecture, it is proof. And when your old friend gets on national television and calls that thing garish and obscene and a monument to somebody's ego, that is not just a political disagreement. That is personal. That lands differently when the man saying it came to your 40th birthday party. Now here is where D.L. Hugley stopped being emotional and started being surgical, because what he pointed out next is not an opinion, it is a pattern, and patterns are receipts. Bill Maher spent years on television, never once mentioning the cost of a presidential library, never once questioning whether they were necessary, never once calling them garish or obscene or monuments to ego. Bill Clinton got a presidential library. Bill Maher said nothing. George W. Bush got a presidential library. Bill Maher said nothing. Ronald Reagan has a presidential library. Bill Maher said nothing. Barack Obama gets a presidential library. And suddenly, Bill Maher has a lot to say.
I have never seen Bill Maher mention the price or the look of a presidential library until Obama got one. I've never heard him mention them at all. And it's a fairly common refrain. He always has the vantage point of a white guy. When you're a white guy and you're an older white guy, you're a single white guy, you're a straight white guy, you're a rich white guy, you tend to look at things from that prism. That obviously we all are. But to intimate that I just don't understand why I never heard anybody, particularly this man, talk about how garish a structure was and how much it was. I didn't hear him talk about Bill Clinton's structure. I didn't hear him talk about George Bush's structure or Ronald Reagan's structure.
That is the receipt. That is the documented pattern. Every other president got a library, and Bill Maher had nothing to say. The moment the first black president gets one, suddenly it looks like aliens built it in Dubai. Suddenly it is a monument to someone's ego. Suddenly the money could have been better spent elsewhere. DL did not call Bill Maher racist directly. He did not need to. He just laid out the timeline and let people do the math themselves. And the math is not complicated. But then DL added something that made the hypocrisy even more undeniable.
And then a good percentage of the audience said that they would, and he called them liars. Here's the thing. Somebody should let Bill Maher know that from now until the end of the year, the Obama library is sold out.
Sold out. The Obama Presidential Library that Bill Maher called a garish monument nobody would visit, sold out through the end of the year. Bill Maher called his own audience liars for saying they wanted to go. The real liar in that conversation was the narrative Bill was trying to push. Because the actual public, the real people making real choices about where to spend their time, have decided this building matters. They are going, in huge numbers, through the end of the year. Here is where the conversation shifts from a personal beef between two comedians to something that every Black American, and honestly, every American who cares about history, needs to pay attention to. D.L. Hugley said something in his response that should be heard by every single person who dismissed this as just another celebrity argument.
I can tell you why, as a Black man who was inspired by this man, and who raised children who were inspired by this man, who have seen the world be inspired by this man. It is because the way that Donald Trump is assailing Black history, the way that he is trying to destroy his legacy, that structure may well be the only proof we ever had that a Black president existed. That structure right now, the Obama Library, may be the only proof. The way that they're decimating our history, they're removing Harriet Tubman, they're moving famous Black figures, they're moving, whether they're officers who served nobly in the army, whether they were civil rights leaders, he is removing them. So that structure that you find so garish, that structure that you find so obscene, may be the only footnote to a great Black man who became president.
The only proof we ever had that a Black president existed. When DL said that, it was not hyperbole. It was not dramatic exaggeration for effect. It was a statement rooted in what is actually happening right now in America. Think about what has occurred since the current administration came into power. Harriet Tubman's image being removed from currency plans, DEI programs being dismantled across the federal government, military bases that were renamed to honor civil rights figures getting renamed back, Black history being systematically removed from federal institutions, military academies, and public schools. Obama's portrait was reportedly moved to the basement of the White House. When you put all of that together, when you look at the pattern of what is being erased and who is being erased, D.L. Hugley's point about that building being the only footnote left standing becomes something that is genuinely difficult to argue against. Bill Maher asked why we need this building, why we cannot just keep the memory in our hearts and minds. The answer is sitting right in front of us, because the people who do not want that memory to exist are not keeping it in their hearts and minds. They are actively removing it from every official record and institution they can reach. Bricks and concrete and $850 million of architecture are harder to erase than a name on a list. Now let's zoom out, because this situation between DL and Bill Maher is part of a pattern that a lot of Black Americans have been noticing for years. Bill Maher presents himself as a progressive, as someone who is on the right side of history, as someone who pushes back against racism and ignorance and the worst impulses of American politics. But there's a specific kind of white progressive who supports the idea of Black progress in the abstract, while getting uncomfortable with specific visible manifestations of that progress in the concrete. They will tell you racism is real, but then question whether a monument to the first Black president is really necessary. They will tell you Black history matters, but then ask whether $850 million could not have been better spent somewhere else. They will tell you they believe in equality, but somehow every Black institution, every Black celebration, every Black monument seems to come with a price tag attached to it in their mind that the equivalent white institution never does. DL called this out directly when he talked about the pattern of Bill Maher's criticism.
I have never seen Bill Maher mention the price or the look of a presidential library until Obama got one. I've never heard him mention them at all. And it's a fairly common refrain. He always has the vantage point.
That prism, that specific prism that makes some things invisible and other things suddenly very visible. That makes Clinton's library unremarkable and Obama's library garish. That makes Reagan's monument not worth mentioning and Obama's monument worth a whole segment on national television. DL is not saying Bill Maher is a card-carrying racist. He is saying something almost more important. He is saying that even people who think they are on the right side can carry a prism shaped by their identity that distorts what they see without them even realizing it. And when you have a platform as big as Bill Maher's, that distortion reaches millions of people and shapes how they think. Let's talk about the Obama library itself for a moment. Because beyond the beef and beyond the politics, what is this building actually about? The Obama Presidential Library in Chicago is not just a building about one man's presidency. It is a community development project on the south side of Chicago, one of the most historically underserved Black communities in America. The project includes a museum, a public library branch, athletic facilities, a recording studio, a children's garden, and job training programs designed to serve the surrounding community for generations. This is not a vanity project sitting in a wealthy neighborhood catering to tourists. This is infrastructure built in a Black community designed to serve Black people for decades to come. Bill Maher asked who was going to go to it. The answer is the people who live there, the kids on the south side of Chicago who now have access to facilities and programming that were not there before. The families in one of America's most iconic but most neglected Black neighborhoods who now have something that says, this community matters, this history matters, you matter. And D.L. Hugley's point about inspiration is not abstract. When Barack Obama was elected in 2008, something shifted for Black children in America. Something shifted for Ro Khanna, who was told as a young Indian American student that he could never be elected to anything. Something shifted for millions of people who had spent their entire lives being told that certain rooms were not for them. The Obama Library is a physical space that tells that story permanently. A place where a child from the south side of Chicago can walk through and see what is possible. Where parents can bring their kids and say, look what happened here. Look what we did. Bill Maher thinks that can just live in people's hearts and minds. D.L. Hugley knows, from watching what is happening to Black history right now in real time, that what does not get written down and built and preserved gets erased. D.L. Hugley ended his response with something that made it clear this is not a temporary disagreement that two old friends are going to work out over dinner. This is a values divergence, a split that reflects something deeper than one comment about one building. D.L. said they are both becoming what they would have been anyway. And what that means is that as they get older, the positions they hold are hardening into who they really are. The compromises you make when you are younger, the friendships you maintain across real differences because you think those differences do not matter that much, start to feel less sustainable when the stakes get higher. When the stakes were lower, D.L. could be on Bill Maher's show and laugh and debate and go home. When the stakes are Black history being erased from federal institutions in real time, a joke about a presidential library looking like aliens built it in Dubai is not something you can just let go. D.L. Hugley has spent his entire career fighting for the right to be respected in rooms that did not always want him there. From Kings of Comedy to network television to his radio show to his podcast, he has consistently been someone who calls out disrespect the moment he sees it, regardless of who it comes from. That includes former friends. And the message he sent with this response was not just to Bill Maher, it was to everyone watching. It was a reminder that proximity to power does not make you immune to accountability. That friendship does not buy you the right to disrespect what matters to someone without hearing about it. Bill Maher came to DL's 40th birthday party and then went on national television and called the first Black president's library garish and obscene. D.L. Hugley noticed, and he made sure everybody else did too. Bill Maher has always presented himself as the guy who tells the truth even when it makes people uncomfortable. But D.L. Hugley just showed everybody that sometimes the uncomfortable truth is not the one you are telling. Sometimes the uncomfortable truth is about the blind spots you carry without realizing it, about the prism through which you see the world, about why some things are suddenly visible and worth criticizing when they were completely invisible before. The Obama Presidential Library is sold out through the end of the year. The people have already voted with their feet, and D.L. Hughley made sure that Bill Maher's comments did not go unanswered, that the pattern got documented, that the receipts got laid out clearly for everyone to see. Two old friends, one building, and a moment that revealed exactly who they have both become. Drop in the comments. Do you think D.L. Hughley was right to call out his former friend this publicly? And do you think Bill Maher's comments were just a bad take or something deeper? Like and subscribe, because these conversations are the ones that actually matter.